Hello, my friends. It is Thursday, January 9th, and a federal appeals court actually just issued a major ruling against the government regarding temporary protected status, or TPS. I'm talking about the 48-page ruling in the case National TPS Alliance versus Kristi Noem. The court found that the government acted illegally when it tried to end protections for hundreds of thousands of people, but the situation is far from over. But to understand the ruling, you first have to understand TPS, or temporary protected status. So what is that? Well, this is a legal status that was created by Congress in 1990. It's considered a safety net program for people who are already in the United States, whose home countries are facing extraordinary and temporary conditions. Think things like civil war, environmental disasters, or total economic collapse. How it works is that TPS is granted for short periods of time, usually 6, 12, or 18 months. When that time period is up, the government is then supposed to review the situation in the country of origin to see where they're at. If that country is still unsafe or the resources are still not available, they then can extend that TPS status, which is why you've seen folks who've been here on TPS since the 90s. So it essentially allows people to live here and work legally. It is not citizenship, and it's not permanent, and it does not grant a pathway towards becoming a U.S. citizen. It basically simply states if you're here in the United States and there's a major catastrophe in your home country, you can file TPS and stay here instead of going back to a war zone or a flood zone, etc. Now, the legal issue involved in the ruling is something called vacatur. So Secretary Noem tried to end these protections for specifically Venezuelans and Haitians, but instead of following a standard legal process to do it, she tried to use a move called vacatur. Now, in legal terms, vacatur essentially means to cancel or erase a previous decision as if it never happened. And my understanding is that Kristi Noem tried to say all of those extensions should be just erased or canceled, which means those people would now be in the country illegally instead of here under that protected status. So essentially, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in this ruling found that the secretary does not have the power to do that. The judges wrote in there that the law gives her the power to manage the program, but it does not give her, quote, raw, unchecked power to simply erase these extensions that are already active. And additionally, the court found evidence of what they call racial animus. So Judge Salvador Mendoza Jr. noted that the government didn't actually prove that conditions had improved in Haiti or Venezuela. Instead, he argued the administration used stereotype-based labels, quotes, to point these immigrants as dangerous in order to use it as a pretext or a false excuse to kick them out of the country rather than follow the laws. So what happens next? Well, if the court called it illegal, are people still in danger? Yes. The Supreme Court has issued what's known as an emergency stay. A stay is a court order that pauses a ruling. So this stay allows the government to keep their current policy in place while this legal fight continues to play out and get kicked back up and down the chain. Because of that stay, families are still losing their work permits and facing deportation today. Now, for the Haitian community, this is even more dire because the next major date affecting their TPS is February 3rd. Now, February 3rd is the expiration date that the government set for Haiti's current TPS protections. If that date passes and a judge hasn't stepped in to stop it, thousands of people from Haiti would essentially lose their legal right to work and could face immediate deportation. Because the Supreme Court has stayed or paused the orders that were protecting these people, that February 3rd deadline is currently live. So all we can do is wait to see if the Supreme Court will eventually uphold the law or allow this administration to proceed with these removals. If you have any questions about this lengthy document, please drop them in the comments. I'll do my best. Like I always say, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, and I'm a fact finder. So this is my interpretation of the ruling with a little bit of guidance also from AP News reporting. So I will put both of those sources on the screen, and down below I will include a link to where you can go and see the full ruling yourselves.